Make a racing mower that does 30 plus miles per hour on ice. Check. Use one of the internet's most hated engines. Check. Take the governor out of said engine. Make the engine turn $5,000 plus. Check. End up hitting our bottleneck. Our bottleneck in this is this. These Kohler carburetors are absolutely just atrocious. The idle jet is almost uncleanable in these things. The natural way that the bowl is set up inevitably ends up popping the gasket here, which dumps gasket right there on top of where the exhaust is, catching these things on fire. The solenoids are notorious for catching on fire, which is right underneath a bowl filled with gasoline. So on a side note, if you have one of these and you need to replace it, please do yourself a favor. In the description, I will have a link for this. It is a Hipa carburetor. It has a redesigned flange. It uses a different setup. These things are unkillable. I love it. Absolutely the best replacement for all of these Kohlers. I'll post a link for this down below. If you're gonna replace a Kohler carburetor, please do yourself a favor and get one of these. But at the end of the day, this is unable to be upgraded. So what we have now is this is leaning out when we're at our upper RPMs. We just plain are running out of fuel. The other thing is if we watch our tachometer, we cannot get this thing to idle below 2,000 RPMs because, yet again, this is non-upgradable, which means that we can't fix the idle jet. This is your generic, everyday Gx390 Honda clone carburetor. And these things have a modification following that is just plain unbelievable. They're used on several different single-cylinder Hondas that are built in order to push into 30 horsepower almost. So on this setup, this thing should be massive overkill. The airflow through these is 28 millimeter. The airflow through that is actually a little bit less. It's about 27. These have upgradable idle jets. You can build these in order to run methanol. It has a upgradable primary jet. And if you really get froggy with this, you can buy a 3-circuit carb and have triple jet technology. That's what we're going to be working with on trying to set up today. Now, obviously, these have two different bolt patterns. What I did figure out was that the right-hand bolts, they match up. The left hand, on the other hand, does not. So we're going to see what we can do in order to move that one up. I've got a box with a ton of random parts in here. We've got some studs that came with one of the random kits we worked with earlier. That is one issue we're going to run into is if you look at the size of the hole here on the out and you look at the size hole on the back side, Hondas use tapered stud setups in order to center them. So we might run into issues there. But I'm thinking if we sleeve the stud with like some brake line or something, we might be able to get away with it. Alright, let's rip this off. One noticeable hurdle we're already finding, the chokes both go the same direction. Which, I'm not worried about it. If I have to manually choke it, that's perfectly fine with me. But this is a push for throttle setup. See, the rod goes that direction. This, whoops, that's good for it. This is a pull for throttle setup. So it goes that direction. So those are two very different setups that I'm going to have to figure out a workaround on. But for now, we'll just get this taken off and then go from there. Kohler uses this really awkward thermal spacer here. So if we undo the screw that's right here, Then that comes loose. This comes loose. So there's a gasket that goes there. And this can wear out and cause all kinds of stupid lean out issues in these Kohlers. And then there's this little insert here that lines up with that in order to cover up and stop the turbulence, I'm assuming, that would happen from this design. Now, at this point, if we were to take this and just attempt to slide it on, it would not line up even remotely close. The problem is, we need to line up with that hole and then figure out a way to lift this stud on this side. Another thing I'll post a link to is this universal head gasket kit. It's funny because it's actually cheaper to buy the entire head gasket kit that comes with the valve cover gasket, a bunch of different carburetor gasket options, exhaust manifold gasket, all the different bolts for the head and everything, than it is to go and buy a lot of these and have all the parts to do a head gasket change on hand if need be. But that being said, those universal kits come with these two gaskets, which go right here. So there's the open gasket, which is what usually ends up on the bigger 21 intake manifold and stuff like that. Then there's this intake gasket, which is supposed to go on like this for the 19 horsepower. But if we take this and we flip it like this, then we should be able to grab a piece of plastic or something. In this case, we're going to grab a giant cutting board here that I picked up at the thrift store. We should be able to template that, and then we can drill into this, and we can put the mounting stud for the carburetor right there. We can use this stud on this side for the carburetor, and maybe we can get this mounted. We got quite the mix of parts going on now. So this is the original engine stud, and we're going to have to do something to be able to tighten against this. These are studs that actually go to a 6.5 or the 212cc Duramaxes or the Predators. They're in all kinds of dead generators all over the place. So these are easy to get. They're 10 millimeter on both ends. So this is actually screwed right into the factory Kohler mount that's right there. At this point, we've got it leveled out. As you can see, we got the gasket there. We got that figured out where to drill it and tap it. Now we've got this right here. What I'm going to do before I start making that hole is I'm going to put this on the other side and trace it out. That way I can start drilling holes through that and make sure that we don't blow out this upper edge, because this is sitting a little proud and I don't want to end up going through. Looks like I had every right to be cautious. So there's the center of where the Honda carb wants to go. There's the center of where our port actually is. So I'm going to drill out right there, right there, right there, and then we're going to port match it down through a little bit. It's not a perfect scenario, but I think it'll still work out. Adapters, adapters, and more adapters. So from the big gas line to the little gas line, we had to order some adapters. I'll post a link for those in the description. We've got the plate here that normally would go on the regular Gx390 intake manifold and stuff. We're going to make some sort of custom airbox or something later. We also took out the stud that was here. I figured out it was a screw-in stud after I found out you could actually buy these separately. So I unscrewed that and I stuffed a bolt in there. So we moved over and we've got our 6 horsepower, 6.5, 212cc, whatever, babble stud right here. the same stud here, our custom adapter. We've got the Kohler gasket on the back side. We've got the GX gasket on the front side. And now we're going to see if this thing will even run. Now, this is geared for 390cc stock. This thing is like 500 plus. I expect it to run. I do not expect it to run very well. I've already bought the methanol jet kit for this, and we'll throw that in a future video if this thing fires up. Here we go. Kill off, RPM sensor relocated, kill tether where we can grab it, push button, choke, fuel, and fuel. Now I'm expecting this to have to pump a little bit because I can see that there's no fuel flowing. And hold it on idle. Okay, did we die because we don't have enough fuel, or did we die? Okay, choke on. Idle. Okay, choke on. About 25% throttle. Oh yeah, that thing is running really lean. So we're going to dial this idle up on the higher side. And now we'll punch it and we'll see if it'll start and go from there. Hi. Is it running? Yes. Is it running atrociously, massively lean? Very yes. But it's a 390cc carburetor on a 500 plus engine. We were expecting it to run lean. That's why we've got all the snapping and all the kickback. And I bet if I had to stuff the camera underneath there, I bet we probably would have had a blue flame about that long. In the future, we're going to throw some jets in this thing. We're going to see if we can get it to sit happy again at the 4,600 RPM that it liked before. And then we'll go from there.